everyone.
Hi.
Suzanne, glad to be here with you.
Yes.
I want to start with a little bit of a, I don't know, is it a fairy tale, like a children's story? Like there's this thing about the big bad wolf and
yes.
how awful wolves are. And I feel like it's maybe ingrained in us because of some of these stories that we hear as a children where like the wolf is the enemy. What's the truth though in real life right here in Idaho?
Oh boy. So is there anyone here that hasn't read Little Red Riding Hood or a story like that when they're a child, right? We all grew up with these terrible stories about wolves, but actually with the native culture here, especially the organization and the tribe that I've worked with, the Nez Perce tribe here in Idaho, they had very different stories growing up, and theirs were stories about how the wolf was a family member, how the wolf was the teacher, and that you could learn to live in balance with nature by observing what the wolf did. So it's just a whole different approach to the perspective on what a wolf actually is.
I mean, and also as you're saying that, people are seeing, this photo behind you of this cute little wolf pup behind you.
Yes.
Before we get into some of the things that you've shared with me about the way that we've responded to them, what's been driving this human response, at least here in Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, in terms of livestock that farmers and ranchers need, and then wolves and their natural habitat and their natural instincts? What's the friction there?
Well, in the last several hundred years, we've gone from being largely wild, wide open spaces to having a lot more land that's occupied by livestock. In fact, if you look at even internationally, globally, we are at 96% mammalian biomass on planet Earth is human, livestock, and our pets. That leaves 4% for all the wild left. So we keep taking and taking and taking this wild habitat and forcing them into smaller and smaller areas. And these are species, a lot of them, like wolves, where they're used to dispersing for hundreds of miles, maybe over 1,000 miles. And having that large landscape, being able to be the kind of the bioengineer of that landscape, influencing it at such a large level, that's their job. So they're not used to having very small, tight places and corners where they are allowed to be. And of course, when we put livestock out there, we're basically telling them that we're putting in animals that are a lot more vulnerable, that are weaker, and their job in nature is to cull the weak animals. So it really, and it's confusing for especially wild predators, that we're trying to raise these livestock out there that can't defend themselves very well. We've bred that out of them, and we react by them taking those livestock, even though we have millions of them out there, and they're going to end up, most of them, in the slaughterhouse anyway, right? So, and every time we come into conflict with these wild predators, we tend to kill the wild predators. So, yeah.
And don't just tend to. In the case of the wolves, I mean, we're talking about from millions and hundreds of thousands down to a fraction of that amount.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Wolves are a keystone species, especially in this region, right? Where you were saying that it's their job, whether it's, deer in Wisconsin and Minnesota, elk maybe out here, that older, weaker animals, that's what they go and use for their food. They kill and eat, but it's also helping prevent the spread of things like Lyme disease,
Chronic wasting disease. Huge issue.
And so we've kind of moved into their land and served up a buffet for them, and we've gotten mad at them and killed them for doing the thing that nature taught them. I mean, am I understanding this correctly?
Right. That's why they're here. That is their reason for being here, is that they cull these diseases from these giant herds. They keep the herds moving so they don't hammer the habitat that they're on. And unlike us, where we all often put these animals in pastures or we try to keep them corralled together, when you do that, you're really hammering the land underneath it. So it no longer supports the amount of vegetation it once had, all the other species that it has. So there's a wonderful video out called How Wolves Change Rivers. And it really connects the dots between how wolves move on the landscape and how they actually can help bring back healthier landscapes because of that, their instinctual presence on the land.
And before we talk about the really fascinating work that you and your organization have done, I know you brought something with us to show one of the many ways that humans have decided that, well, if we're going to get rid of wolves or keep them away from our livestock, what are we doing to these animals?
Yeah, so I was part of the wolf reintroduction team for Idaho and Yellowstone, and when we brought wolves back here, we had no wolves that we knew of in Idaho, maybe a couple, and of course none in Yellowstone at that time. And so it was such a glorious thing to be able to be part of that we're going to restore this historic wrong and bring back the species that's so integral to our landscape here. And now, since the federal government has stepped away and the federal protections have been stripped from wolves, now they're back to the same brutality that they had, more than a century ago, where we have trapping and snaring. And
can you show us that what you brought with this?
So this is one of the wolf traps that.
And I asked her, this is safe. It's not going to like trap my hand. But I mean, this is heavy. And so essentially like the wolf's going in there and it's clamping down, like breaking their foot, their leg.
It snaps closed. With these, they're more likely to break something because it's a smooth jaw trap. It also cuts off circulation pretty quickly. In Idaho, it's legal for them to keep a wolf in a trap or any large predator like that in a trap for 72 hours, which means they get exposed to heat, that they can't get into anything to drink, they can't eat. They're in total stress condition, and they often die in the traps before the trappers even get to them.
And,
so yeah, it's pretty.
And
brutal.
it's animals like this that we're seeing on the screen behind you that are being subjected to this for just doing what nature intended, right?
And they also have bounties on wolves. The first state in the country to restore bounties on wolves of thousands of dollars, even on pups in the den. They go in and they dig up the pups before their eyes even open. Thousands of dollars on wolves here in Idaho. Oh, it's the worst place in the world to be a wolf, except for Blaine County, except for this, the Wood River Wolf Project here in Blaine County. We've been working for almost 20 years now and set the model for how do you use these non-lethal tools to keep wolves apart from livestock. We have about 25,000 sheep, as everybody that lives here knows. We have a parade that runs thousands of sheep through Main Street. We've had that tradition here for quite some time, and we lose out of the 25,000 sheep, less than 5 a year to wolves because these tools work. And it's a very sustainable model, which is now being duplicated worldwide.
And I don't know if you could hear some of the gasps in the audience. We were talking about like the awful things that the humans that we hear even in this area are doing to wolves. And that's what makes your work so important, that you're making sure that this isn't necessary, that these animals can live in their natural habitat. So what does that look like? I'm a rancher, I have livestock, I don't want the wolf to attack them. What's the work that you're doing to help protect those animals?
Some of the things that we started with was working with them to add large livestock guardian dogs to the projects. And to wolves, livestock guardian dogs are just funny looking wolves. They're strange wolves, and certain time of year, the springtime when wolves are denning, they think the dogs are a big threat to their pups. So we have to be really careful about not having those livestock guardian dogs go right on top of den sites, because the wolf's reaction is, it's a strange wolf, it's coming to kill my pups, and I'm going to fight it. So any other time of the year, having those strange wolves out there, they go, okay, those are your sheep, you have them, I'll focus on the elk, our family will just keep apart. So the dogs are great, and we have like 4 to 5 dogs per band, it's huge. And the band of sheep can be, 500 to 1,500 sheep in a band, so pretty large group. We have fox lights, we have...
And tell us about fox lights. I wanted her to demonstrate it, but apparently because of these lights, it won't work. So what does it look like if you were out and saw a fox light?
So the fox light came from Australia. I brought them into the country from in a duffel bag about 15 years ago. It was the first time we got them into North America, and it was designed by an Australian researcher who was developed them to use them to protect his sheep from foxes. And it looks like, from a distance, they go off at night. It looks like somebody walking around with a flashlight. So it gives the wolf a sense of like motion and human presence there, which is really the best thing, because
they're afraid of us.
They're afraid of us. We've killed millions of them. So, if anybody's the big bad, it's us, yeah. And so they know, stay away from where, dangerous people are. and dangerous people tend to be where the livestock are. So we're using that instinct that wolves have to help keep the peace between the livestock operations and the wolves.
So we have funny looking wolves. We have what looks like a human with a flashlight. People may also see in the bottom right side of the screen these red flags. What does that do for wolves?
That's called flattery. And the first place it was tested in the wild was here in this valley as a non-lethal tool. It came from Eastern Europe, and the villagers would take pieces of their clothing and they would cut them up into strips, and then they would hang them on these really long ropes that went out into the woods. And this was used to kill wolves because then the villagers would come around and with pots and pans, they would drive the wolves into the wide end of the V, and the hunters would wait in the funnel and the narrow end, and they'd kill the wolves because the wolves were afraid of crossing this stuff. We don't know why they're so afraid of it, but they are. And, it was just amazing when my Dr. Marco Musiani, who was my graduate advisor, saw this, and he was like, gosh, that would make a great non-lethal tool. So we've used all kinds of things. I've even gone as far as using, this stuff looks like it should be around a used car parking lot. We don't know why wolves are afraid of it, but they are. We've even used, the air dancers that are in parking lots.
The inflatable,
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, we've scared wolves with those before, and you can actually chase them into another county with those. So, we're always looking for
I'm kind of afraid of them too, so I understand. Ever have one hit you in the head?
We're always looking at what's the next best tool? How do we promote coexistence? And we're taking the lessons learned from this project, and we're on the ground in Colorado this last week. We've been helping in Israel, across Europe, just trying to help people, communities especially, learn how to coexist with their local wildlife. And these wolves are one of the top predators out there.
But important predators, important to the ecosystem.
Very important to the ecosystem, and we nearly wiped them out.
And so give us that compare and contrast of Blaine County, Sawtooth Forest is, right outside these doors. How are things going here for wolves as compared to the rest of Idaho and the rest of this region?
So Idaho's wolf population got up to close to about 2,000 after we reintroduced them here in the mid-1990s. And we had a really successful wolf population to the point where they were starting to disperse out to Oregon, to Washington. Eventually they made it their way down to California. And then when the federal government delisted wolves, they took their federal protection away. The states started hunting them. And that's when the bounties came in. That's when the trapping and snaring. They kill wolves 365 days of the year here with no limit, no bag limit. So it's not really hunting. It is just simply persecution. It is killing as many as they can. And if it keeps going, we will lose them again, all of them.
So for people, I continue to kind of hear the reaction in the crowd. I think everyone understands how important this work is that you're doing. Maybe also hearing about this for the first time. So if people are having that reaction, what would you want them to know or to do if they're like, this is great, how do we do this more places, Suzanne?
Right. Well, it takes work, it takes support. We only operate off of donations, because the federal government will not fund largely this work. The state of Idaho is spending $1 million a year to kill wolves. Just putting that in perspective, last year we lost 2 cows and 29 sheep to wolves statewide. And Idaho is spending $1 million this year on bounties and killing wolves.
How far could that $1 million go if it was given to your organization?
We would solve all the problems. Yeah, there's no reason. And we spend half the amount of money that they do killing wolves on keeping them alive, on keeping the livestock alive. And we don't stop until it's a win for everybody. So everybody that comes around the table with projects like this, we make sure that it's not putting the burden on the ranchers so much, it's not putting the burden so much on the wolves. We share it, and it is taking those burdens off and using these practical non-lethal tools. So if you want to get involved, Wood River Wolf Project has a website. Google it. Let us know that you're interested in helping, and we'd love your donations.
I'm going to sneak in one more question here, if you will. For the ranchers who you've partnered with on this, what's their reaction as compared to the others who don't maybe even understand this and are still using these awful things to protect their livestock?
Well, last year we had a proposal to come in and aerial gun all the wolves in our county. by this private aerial gunning guy out of Nevada. And it was the ranchers that stopped him, our ranchers that stopped him from doing it. So, yeah.
Yeah, please. That certainly deserves applause.
Yeah. Yeah.
So safe to say your ranchers are a pretty big fan of what you've been doing.
They like what we're doing. They still don't love wolves. So, that's okay. They don't have to in order to coexist with them.
I bet the wolves are a big fan of what you're doing, though.
Yeah, they are.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Suzanne, thank you so much for
geez, it was really
important
lovely.
work.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Check out the Wood River Wolf Project.
Yeah, thanks.